Hey there everybody, it has been a while since I've made a video, kind of surprised at this one, but there is a reason, and that is a couple of weeks ago a friend of mine posted an article about a gentleman who had had a negative experience in an emergency room with his wife, and the article was about the gender bias within medicine. I started to read the article and I had to stop because I was getting madder and madder and madder as I recalled my own negative experiences, not only in emergency rooms, but in visits to specialists. And I had to step back because my reaction was really strong. My reaction was one of just, besides being angry, I was frustrated as I looked back and realized how much time was wasted and how I walked away questioning my sanity and feeling shame and wondering, were the health issues that I have all my fault and could they have been prevented? And it made for a very interesting thought process to walk through. But I thought, I am reacting so strongly to this. I need to take a minute and I need to reflect as to why I'm reacting so passionately. And I realized that the biggest component of my reaction is that I walked away from all of those appointments and those interactions with specialists not feeling like I was heard, not feeling that my experiences were valid, and basically walking away without a sense of dignity. And I'm going to share really briefly, hopefully really briefly, I've never been brief, my experiences so that you can kind of see where I was and where I hope to be able to go in the future. And if this is helpful to at least one person, it will be worth it, right? About 8 years ago, I started having involuntary movement. I started to have these periods of flare-ups where I would have difficulty walking, difficulty talking. The muscles started out in a very small area, but eventually over time began to grow so that large areas of my muscles would, this is a really fun word, they would vesiculate, where you could actually see them contracting and turning and twisting. And so it was corkscrewing my body. And we couldn't figure out why. I was having cardiac symptoms and I was having all of these neurological symptoms. And I was referred to a neurologist, and upon meeting me, seriously, I was probably not in his office more than 4 or 5 minutes upon his first meeting with me, not getting any background, just taking one look at me, looking at my age, looking at my occupation, said, "You're having marital problems and would you like a referral to psychology?" You don't know me, you don't know my marriage, you don't know my husband. This is your assessment? Needless to say, I was very upset. He gave that report to my primary care, who was already at the point of being frustrated, not being able to find something to help me, but she latched onto that and kind of stopped communicating with me and stopped being part of a team to help me find answers. And everything was reduced to, you just need to go to see a psychologist. You need to go see a psychologist. A naturopath I was seeing at the time said, "I really think that you're robbing from your bones calcium, and I really would like for you to have a baseline bone density scan as far as part of another component of all of the other things that were going on." I was in my early 40s and I contacted her, and she didn't want to give me a bone density scan because she's like, "You're not 60, you don't need it. Why won't you just go take the referral to psychology?" And I was adamant about needing this because I had this other care provider that said, "I really need you to get a baseline." And so after much arguing, she checked my insurance. It was covered. I went and had the scan, and my test came back that I was osteopenic, that my bones were thin. So trying to communicate with her and saying, we need to get to the root cause of this and whatever. And she's really not being helpful, but she is willing to send me to specialists that did other tests, a rheumatologist. I saw an infectious disease doctor. I saw an endocrinologist, and they're looking at this. And the endocrinologist was probably the most helpful out of everybody, and the rheumatologist was helpful too. But some of the things in my lab came out as, you're doing weird stuff and we really don't know why. And we have ruled out every possible reason for you to be doing the stuff that you're doing in your labs, except if you have cancer and we just don't know it. So for a year and a half, 2 years, I kind of just sat around waiting for cancer to show up, which thankfully it never did. But within that period of time, I ended up having more acute health issues and being on prednisone for long term. And one of the side effects of long-term prednisone use is that it thins out your bones. And I was already osteopenic, and it seemed reasonable to me that I would have a follow-up bone scan to see if I now had osteoporosis, because I was already on the borderline. So I called my primary care provider and tried to get another order made for a bone density scan to see where I was. Needless to say, the conversation did not go very well. She was actually yelling at me on the phone, saying that I didn't need a bone scan. I was not 60 years old. Although if you saw my other post, according to the lady at Joanne Fabrics, I might be. But the whole tone of the conversation was, you've already had a baseline scan much earlier than you needed to. You don't need this scan. We're not going to order it for you. Why are you being so stubborn? You need to go see a psychologist because this is all in your head. Like, that was what I came away from the conversation. And she got to the point where she would no longer communicate with me, and she would have her assistant call me. And so I tried to be reasonable and walk them through the steps of, I understand that I'm young. However, the baseline scan already shows that I'm osteopenic. I've been on prednisone for almost a year at some pretty high doses. It's reasonable to do a follow-up to see if I now have osteoporosis. They wouldn't buy it. But they said, the endocrinologist does want to follow up on you because you have these other weird labs. Fine. So I go into the endocrinologist. I sit down. He comes in. What can I do to help you? I didn't want to be here. I thought you wanted to see me. He's, no, they told me you wanted to see me. I'm like, great. You know, I'm thinking, another wasted day. I have to meet this guy. He's not going to be helpful. He's read my chart. He knows that they think that it's a psychology thing. And I'm going to have another negative interaction. But he was actually really super kind. And he said, you know, I've been over your chart very thoroughly. He's like, your body is doing some things that I don't understand why it's doing. There are things that are tightly regulated by the body, and your levels are 2, 3, 4 times what they should be. And he's like, I don't have any answers for you. He's like, we've tested you for the things that we can test you for. There's no way to screen your entire body to see if there's cancer. And he's like, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that I can help you with? And I said, oh, actually there is. Said, I'm already osteopenic based on a baseline bone density. I've been on prednisone for almost a year. I said, I would love to have a repeat bone density scan to see if it tipped me over into osteoporosis because it was already borderline. And he's like, oh, yeah, for sure. He goes, that's standard protocol. I said, oh, really? I said, my primary care provider refused to do this test for me. And he's like, I have no problem with doing that test for you. He goes, I will put it in the computer right now. Went and had my repeat bone density. Came back as having osteoporosis. I think at the time, I was like 45 at the time. You would think, you would hope that my primary care provider would have called me on the phone herself and said, we just got your results back. You were right. You have osteoporosis. I apologize for giving you a hard time. Here are your options for future care, and we'll be sure to monitor you and to make sure that things are getting better or stable and not getting worse. Got a standard form letter in the mail. It says, here's your results. You have osteoporosis. Here are your drug options. Let me know which one you want, and I'll call it into the pharmacy. Not real pleased about that. Right, so this is year upon year of frustration of trying to work it out. And I didn't want to just immediately switch providers at the first time of resistance, because that I think is also telling to other providers if you can't find a provider that you can work with. Like I really wanted to work with her to work through this, but it became really obvious from the point of that letter on that she does not want to work with me to try to find answers. So we ended up switching insurance and finding different providers, and I now have an amazing naturopath who was like, I need you to get tested for this, this, and this. And it turns out I have genetic mutations that cause me to not process folic acid correctly, and the folic acid is not converting into something, and so it's messing up with my nervous system, and there's lots of explanation. There's an underlying connective tissue disorder. So where we had nothing but questions for the last 8 years, we're now starting to find answers, and we're starting to be able to do things to have better care. And so it's all good. It's all getting worked out. I'm getting the care that I need. I know that it wasn't a psychology issue. There are times when it is a psychology issue. We are mind, body, and spirit. I understand that. There is a time and a place for that. But I knew, because I have people around me that care about me, that were saying, there seems to be an organic reason for why you're doing what you're doing. But I finally found a group of people that were willing to help journey with me down this road to find answers. And after reading this article and getting so mad, a meme, a silly little meme, just kind of popped into my head. And it was the meme, it said something to the effect of, you can't expect a different result if you keep doing the same things over and over again. And for some reason that popped into my head, and I thought, I've had poor interaction with specialists and with ER doctors over and over again. I've had some great ones too, but I've had a lot of negative ones over and over again. I can't change them. I can't change the kind of experiences that they have. I can't change their own baggage that they bring into medicine. I can't change any of how they respond to me, but I can change my end of it. So I really started to pray. I'm like, is there something, Lord, that I'm doing that keeps leading me to these outcomes with these providers that I can change on my end? So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it. And I thought, I go in to these appointments already feeling really frustrated because I've had a whole series of other appointments where I've been left feeling like it's all in my head and I'm crazy and nobody really wants to help me. So I already come in with really defeated. And I thought, what if I change my mindset of, the Lord loves me, no good thing He's going to withhold from me. This person may or may not be the person to provide care for me. I have no idea what they experience in their day-to-day life, but being the wife of a physician, I understand there are people that try to manipulate the system. There are people that need to have more of a look and treatment of emotional things that are causing physical problems. I know that there are people that are maybe less self-aware of how their overall life and maybe stress is impacting their health. So I see both sides of it, right? I'm trying to see both sides of it. I'm trying to see, here's my side of it, here's their side of it. They don't know who I am. They're just meeting me for the first time. And so I thought, the next time I get referred to a specialist, if they look at my labs and my history and they're kind of confused by it and they can't help me, and if they make that suggestion of, we just think this is all in your head and you need to see a psychologist. Instead of immediately feeling hurt, shame, frustrated, and the victim, what if I looked at them and said, I appreciate that suggestion. It is something that we have considered. I do have people in my life that I can trust to be honest if this is the avenue that I need to go, because there is a time and a place for that within medical issues that you have to take care of a spiritual or a psychological component. I do understand that. However, in my case, there's enough evidence and we have enough to go on that we think that there are other root organic causes that are causing my symptoms. And what I'm looking for from you is for you to simply be honest and say, I don't know the answer and I don't know how to help you. instead of somehow flipping it around and making this my fault. And that what I'm looking for you is just simply an answer as to whether or not you're willing to journey with me to try to find answers. If you're willing to maybe explore some alternative routes, or maybe look at some unique case studies to see if you could find maybe some labs that we could do. I'm just looking for somebody to come alongside and partner with me to see if we can find more answers for however long that season is, and to help me just maybe find more pieces to my puzzle. If you're not that person, that's totally great. But what I need from you is to not take the fact that you don't know and spin it around so that it's somehow my fault, because it's neither true, helpful, or productive. And to be able to walk in there with already owning a sense of dignity of who I am and who I am in Christ, and that He loves me and no good thing would He withhold from me, and to walk in with a sense of worth, just simply being one of His children and being part of humanity, and then leaving their response up to them, because they could totally react in a positive light and go, you know what, you're right, and I am willing to do some research and to find some answers, and that's great, win-win. Or they could say, you know, this is not within the scope of medicine that I feel like I can practice. It makes me uncomfortable, and I'm not the person for you, but I hope that you find somebody that can help you, and I wish you well. They could respond in a positive way like that. Or they can continue to say, you know what, you're whack and you need to just go see psychology and I'm done with you. But either way, having presented myself that way, I'm still going to walk out of that office differently than I had previously, because I will have already established that I have people in my life that care about me, that are going to be honest, that know that there are organic reasons, and that I've already established that I know that I have dignity and I have worth. And that there's nothing that some other person can say that's going to be able to rob me of that, because that flies in the face of who God tells me I am. And so for those of you that have had long, drawn out health issues where you have been frustrated with the medical community, could I just encourage you, the next time you have to go and see a specialist and they give you an answer that you don't like, that you don't immediately crumble or you don't immediately get mad, but you just calmly state what your needs are, what you want from them, and then ask them if they're willing to give that to you. And if they're not, it's okay. You can trust that the Lord's going to provide somebody that's going to come alongside of you and help you figure it out, so that you don't walk away feeling angry, that you don't have roots of bitterness springing up in your heart, and that you understand that your overall care and your health really are tended to by the Lord, and that in His right time, in His right way, in His wisdom, you'll get the answers that you're looking for and the help that you're needing. And that in the meantime, that He's trying to do a greater work in you and through you, so that you can walk out of that office and still be kind to them, still be loving to them, still leave behind the fragrance of Christ to them, knowing that they don't know everything. They're not God, right? And they're just people trying to do the best that they can. And sometimes people are jerks. It's true. But sometimes people are trying to do the best that they can, and they don't have all the answers, and it's really hard to admit, I don't know. And they don't want to admit, I don't know. They're doctors, and we kind of think, well, you should know. You went to school to know. But they can't possibly know the ins and outs and the details and the intricacies of each and every person. So I just hope and pray that this is beneficial to somebody. I shared this with my girls. It's hard to go into these interactions. You already kind of feel less just being female. Try being a minority female. Whoo! See, there's even another layer there. But we don't have to be victims of those circumstances. We can totally be empowered to be an advocate for ourselves, not in this overt, aggressive, I'm in your face questioning your intelligence and your ability, but you just say, hey, I'm a member of humanity and I deserve respect and dignity that the Lord says I deserve because of who I am in Him and that I'm one of His beloved children. So I hope that this is helpful, and hope you guys have a blessed day. All right.